Welcome to the webinar on SMEs and the policy and finance essentials for them to undertake clean energy transitions. So MSMEs, they're an integral part of the Indian economy. They employ around 15.5 crore individuals across various industries. But the sector is also highly carbon intensive. It accounts for 25% of the total energy consumed by India's overall industrial sector. And to achieve India's broader net zero carbon emissions goals, it's important to address the challenges and the barriers faced by SMEs, small to medium enterprises, which currently mostly rely on fossil fuel sources for their energy security. So the UN, the General Assembly, they inaugurated MSME Day in 2017 to recognize the role that these businesses play in contributing to the economy. And as we approach the 2030 deadline to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, it's important that we support MSMEs in any way we can to achieve the SDGs, including affordable and clean energy, responsible consumption and production, and decent work for all. So in this lead-up event to MSME Day, we look at how policy and finance are key enablers for SMEs' clean energy transition and understand their perspectives on these two issues. So before we begin, I would like to take everyone through a few housekeeping rules. Yeah, so please do keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. The webinar, it'll be 1.5 hours long. It will be recorded, and the recording will be available on WRI India's YouTube channel for future reference. For any questions that come up during the session, please use the Q&A box. Our speakers will try to answer some of them during the session. The moderator may pick a few questions at the end of the discussion and ask them to the speakers. If your question is for a specific speaker, please do mention their name along with the question. For feedback, please drop an email to indiaenergy@wri.org. So I welcome everyone again into this webinar. Let me just take everyone through the agenda as well. So we will start with opening remarks by Mr. Jarnail Singh, Deputy Director, India, MacArthur Foundation. Then we'll have a presentation of the key findings from a working paper analyzing the policy landscape for supporting the energy transition in small and medium enterprises in India. This will be followed by conference proceedings of a series of roundtables on financing clean energy technologies in SMEs in India. Then we will have a panel discussion to discuss these topics and the policy and finance aspects required. And then finally, we'll have the Q&A round. So now that we've gone through this, I would like to request Mr. Jarnail Singh to share opening remarks for today's webinar.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Just wanted to check if you guys can hear me. All right.
Yes.
Great. Thanks to World Resources Institute India and all the MSME representatives and all the esteemed panelists gathered together. I want to wish you a happy MSME Day in advance. It's tomorrow, but it's great to be in your August company today. And thanks, Deepak, for including me in this discussion today. So Vaibhav, you've already mentioned this, but I still want to acknowledge the contribution of MSMEs on this day, whether it's jobs, whether it's growth and overall prosperity and nation building. When I look at myself in the mirror, I know that a part of me is markets, what I wear, what I eat, what I drive, what I ride. But at the same time, I think there's a whole supply chain working on that. And that's where I acknowledge the presence of MSMEs in my daily lives as well. So at MacArthur, we've been working in the climate space since 2015. That's when the Climate Solutions Big Bet started. And 2020 was when we were in that mid point of our strategy, when we were looking at, okay, how can we evolve the strategy to suit the needs of the countries that we're working in, which was at that time mostly US, India, and China. And in India, we made a strong pivot towards equity, wherein we went to an extent to say that if the energy transition does not work for people, people who are getting left behind, people who have been marginalized historically and currently, it's not really a solution. So it was as simple as that. As a result of which, the issue of just transition became very central to whatever we um, granted as new funding after 2020. As a result of which, we identified a few groups in particular, small marginal farmers, coastal communities, communities who are dependent on fossil fuels, and definitely the supply chain, which is dependent on fossil fuels. And that's where MSMEs, micro, small, medium enterprises, became a very, very integral part of our strategy. And we're grateful to WRI and a couple of other partners who came to us with a deep strategic insight on how we could impact that. And so that's where MSMEs became a part of our strategy at the foundation. Sadly, so we are winding down our climate big bet by 2026, so we're not able to take in any new partnerships. But this is one of the partnerships that we do cherish with WRI and a couple of other partners. So I'm coming from Bangalore. I was in Bangalore yesterday. Great weather as compared to Delhi. But at the same time, I referred to a meeting that we had with other philanthropic partners over there, where we were talking about systems change. And one of the key discussions was about scale. And I quote one of the people over there, Sanjay, who runs the societal thinking. He mentioned that united we scale, divided we stall. And when we look at systems change, one of the things that was being discussed was systems change can happen by virtue of lived experiences or things that have been lived by some of these constituencies and at the constituency level. And that's where MSMEs become very important. And I was reading what the report has been saying and how WRI has worked around this issue. I feel that since they have chosen the MSME community as a constituency that they've been working on at a 360-degree level, there are a few things that came to me very strongly. So one is aggregation that has been done, whether it's providing electricity through solar rooftops to ensure that MSMEs decarbonize at the same time creating new jobs, but at the same time, providing steam as a service through boilers. And that's been done by some of other partners as well. So aggregation has become key. Again, I go back to that message of united we scale, divided we stall. And I think the second piece that came very strongly from what I have read from the WRI work is about integration with supply chains, whether it's the textile supply chain and the partnerships that they've drawn with larger corporations to integrate SMEs as part of that MSMEs. And I think that's where bargaining power becomes key. And having a voice on the table has been a key ingredient for MSMEs transition in this space. I can go on, but I just wanted to highlight two more pieces over here, whether it's skilling in the automotive sector, what they have done in the EV sector in Coimbatore, or the financing piece, which is even more relevant from an MSME point of view. And finally, since it's WRI, I would be remiss if I don't mention data and evidence building for further acceleration, which has been really key in driving policy change, which means that, unless you can show it, what you cannot see, what you cannot measure, you cannot achieve. And that's where I think this whole energy transition within the MSME space has taken a complete new direction by virtue of data and evidence. And I think in the coming MSME days, World MSME days, we'll see great progress on this front. And I don't want to take a lot of your time because I know that much more erudite people are on this panel, and there's a presentation coming up. But I just want to say that transitions are just starting to unfold in India. And if we focus at the constituency, whether it's MSMEs, whether it's communities dependent on fossil fuels, whether it's mines or supply chains, I think we can work on 360-degree development for all of them. And that is where social protection becomes very important, and we can achieve a just transition on that front. With that, let me hand it back to you, Weber, since you are holding the conversations. But my best wishes to everyone, and thank you so much for making me a part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Jarnal Singh, for your remarks. Now I would like to take it over to Gautamiti S. She's the lead author of this working paper, and she's a senior project associate at WRI India's energy program. So over to you, Gautami.
Thanks, Vaibhav. Thanks, Junaid, sir, for your opening remarks. When are able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. Gautami, you're on mute.
Gautami, your voice is not audible.
Yeah, sorry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session, and I thank you one and all for taking your precious time to attend this session. So, beginning with this paper launching. So, this is a working paper where we present our preliminary findings on analyzing the policy landscape for sustainable clean energy transition in small and medium enterprises in India. So to begin with, the MSME sector is a major contributor of the socio-economic development, and it is a backbone of Indian economy. With 63 million MSMEs in India and contribution of 30% to the national GDP and 45% of exports to manufacturing output, we can see what is the importance of MSME in Indian economy and also the generation of employment. As on December 2023, there were 15.50 crore employment registration on the Udyam portal. Also, the distribution of MSMEs is very marginally skewed, with 51% in the rural and 79% of the urban. So this also highlights that our efforts or interventions to the MSME clean energy transition should not be a sort of a divide between the rural and urban, but then holistic interventions are needed for both the urban and rural MSMEs as well. So moving on to the energy in MSME, what is that MSMEs contribute to energy, and how much does the energy demand in the MSME sector? Out of the 42% of the industrial energy sector consumption in the overall nation's energy demand, 25% is taken up by the MSME sector. And also there is substantial cost included for the MSMEs in the procurement of energy as well. Also, there is 110 million tons of CO2 equivalent annually generated by the MSMEs for the emissions. Now this emissions is also projected that there is a steep increase of by 100% to 72.1 million metric tons by 2930. And this shows the importance of clean energy interventions for the MSME sector. Now, what does this paper do? We know where we are heading with the updated nationally determined contributions and the setting up of target of reducing emission intensity of the GDP by 45% and the installed capacity from non-fossil based energy resources by 2030. We know where we are heading. And also with this paper, we wanted to analyze what has been done for the year from 2010 to 2020 over this decade and where we are right now, and how should we progress, which path should we take up for helping the MSMEs towards clean energy transitions. So initially, we'll analyze what are the energy transition dynamics. Like we'll go to what is the fossil fuel energy consumption, the uptake of energy efficient technologies, what have been the schemes and policies that are there for the MSMEs, and also we sort of review and analyze the schemes that are there in this period. And then we also look into what are the strategies that are there, what are the direct implementation and indirect facilitation that has been there from center, state, and national institutions like BE, SIDBI, and others as well. And then this paper also acts as a primer for stakeholders, which will offer more insights and recommendations to achieve a successful energy transition within the SME sector. So we have followed it up with two research questions. How effective are the existing state and central government policies and schemes and incentives to promote renewable energy? And what can be done to improve the uptake of implementation and effectiveness of such policies? So the scope of this paper is a sort of, there's a set of boundaries that we have chosen, like we have chosen the policy period of 2010 to 2020, and a few selected states that we are working in, and also the policies from the central government. And we have developed a qualitative and quantitative framework analysis, which will be diving deeper into further. And also we have identified the factors that determine the effectiveness of the programs and schemes, and also identify the gaps in the implementation. Now, this is the sort of methodology that we have followed. First, initially, we have chosen these policies, and for the selected states where WRI has its presence for the working. For example, we have chosen Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Tamil Nadu. And also there are a lot of policies by state government, central government, but we have chosen policies, schemes, and programs that target the clean energy aspects. So what are the clean energy aspects that we are looking into? It is energy efficiency, technology upgradation, uptake of renewable energy sources at their facilities. These are the components that we are looking for within the policy or the schemes, and henceforth we have chosen certain of them. And then we have examined the publicly available announcements on the website of relevant ministries and state governments and nodal agencies. How has this policy been created awareness among the stakeholders, among the MSMEs? How has these been working? What is the output of it? So this is based on the publicly available information and also stakeholder consultations as well. Additionally, through stakeholder consultation, we also took inputs from state nodal agencies, SME owners themselves, MSME DIs, industrial associations. All these all their inputs were taken up to gain insights into these initiatives, which have facilitated the energy transition over this decade. So the identified policies, we sort of categorized it based on the target sectors, intervention modalities, and then we mapped it. So here we can see this analytical framework employed for this research. So initially what we did is we mapped a certain schemes and policies, and then we sort of went to the assessment of these schemes through stakeholder discussions and the impact assessment. This was not a sort of linear approach, but then this was a connected, a back-to-back and a parallel approach. Now, initially, what we did was mapping of clean energy intervention. So first we categorized the existing schemes, policies, and interventions at the central government, state government, and then what are the intervention modalities? For example, if a scheme is a very targeted measure, which has an exclusive clean energy component in it, or else it has an intermediary component in it. For example, a certain MSME CDP scheme is there. A part of it is going sustainably manufacturing and then resource efficiency. So that sort of intermediary support is what we have bucketed for certain schemes. And then we also have bucketed it into sector specific measure. For example, Ministry of Textiles has given the solarization of power looms. So this can be bucketed as sector specific measure. So this is how we have mapped the policies that are there. So here is an exhaustive list of schemes that we have analyzed. There are around 32 schemes from center and other state level interventions. So these central intervention schemes has some sort of direct or indirect clean energy component involved in their policy or scheme descriptions. And also in these states, we do have clean energy ambitions taken up exclusively for their state interventions for MSMEs. So now, how did we assess these clean energy policies? So we sort of went through a structured analysis format. So this structured analysis format also was based on initially, what is the policy framework talking about? Is that policy well defined with a clear-cut outline scope, objectives? Is the resources required adequate? Is the intended outcomes are mentioned in the policy framework? The roles and responsibilities of each and every department, whether it is cross-cutting across disciplines and across other departments as well. And does the policy include a monitoring and evaluation framework? We analyze this policy framework with all these factors included. And then we also consider finance as an important aspect. So whether this resource allocation is all encompassing with human, financial, and technological aspects included, so that it forms a robust foundation for the implementation and monitoring. Now, there's one side, there is policy framework and there is resource allocation. Now, how do we bring this together? Are there any coordination mechanisms that transform from the top to bottom and bottom to a top level, and also across the sides of other departments as well? So here is a snapshot of the assessment of policies. This is just a snapshot, and we have a list of policies mentioned in our paper. So here we can see that MSME CDP scheme, Credit Linked Capital Subsidy Scheme, and Z scheme. Here we can see that what is the timeline of the policy, what is the intervention modality, the clean energy objectives, nature of assistance to SME, and what is our observation through stakeholder consultations that we have come through. So for example, MSME CDP scheme, it is an intermediary support where we have common facility centers, infrastructure development facilities. Among that, we have common renewable energy uptake in the scheme. So we can see that the 80% of micro and 20% of small enterprises have been covered through these schemes. And this is the sort of analysis we have done for various schemes as well. For example, we have this Ministry of Textiles, we have solar energy scheme for power loom sector and how it has been functioning. What are the influencing factors in reduction of the subsidies in this scheme? And we also have a scheme from EESL as well. And also technology upgradation fund scheme. So we also have analyzed what is the how many number of times that the scheme has been revised since its beginning and how has it been functioning up to 2020. These are some more schemes from BE, SIDBI, and how are these, what are the observations regarding these schemes through a stakeholder consultation. So this is a basic snapshot of it. And this is a scheme from SIDBI as well, JICA and SIDBI financial assistance schemes to promote energy saving instruments. So we can see what is the nature of assistance here. We do have financial assistance for SMEs through SIDBIs and other banking institutions. Also, we have government-wide integrated program like National Manufacturing Competitiveness Program, working for the quality management and credit-linked subsidies. Now, similarly, we have done it for states as well. This is just a snapshot of states. For example, Tamil Nadu, we have Peace scheme that has been targeting the energy savings in the SME sector. And for Rajasthan, we have promotion of solar thermal collectors. Similarly, we have listed the schemes for Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, and Gujarat as well. Now, what has been the stakeholder convenings and discussions outcomes? When we engage with central and state level policy makers, we captured all of their inputs, like what is an SME owner thinking of the existing policies? What does a nodal agency or an MSME DI officer think of these policies? And what is that the state and central governments are thinking of these policies? So this is where we understood about what is the awareness level of the policies over this entire structure. What is the on-ground impact of this clean energy policy? These were the stakeholder convenings and discussions done through semi-formal and informal stakeholder discussions on ground. So this is the sort of outcome when we discuss with SME owners. SME owners opine that there is a number of documents required to enroll into a scheme. And then most of them depend on the bank branches for finances to implement clean energy measures. And the industry association people opine that there's a lack of demonstration projects, and they need more demonstration projects in the clean energy sector. And then they also opine that more SMEs rely on peer-to-peer learning and word of mouth for adoption of new schemes. And the nodal agencies have been very positive of certain schemes. And for example, one of the MSME DI officer wanted to expand the ZED scheme as well for the other products. They also hoping that the policies are well devised and provide emergency funds and aid development for the infrastructure facilities, but SMEs sometimes lack enthusiasm for renewable energy and energy efficiency. So this is nodal agencies' opinion that we should also address the concerns from the MSME side as well to take up the clean energy measures. Now, these are the key factors that we have analyzed through these discussions for the adoption of clean energy measures by SMEs the uptake of union government and state schemes, loan products for implementing documents required for credit facilities and clean energy finance. We have segregated the outcome and analysis based on these key factors here. And then we understood what exactly goes into this uptake of clean energy measures for the SMEs as well, and the policy makers and the implementers as well. Now, after collecting all this information, how did we assess the impact of it? Now, we did a sort of qualitative and quantitative analysis. What is the energy consumption, cost savings, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and access to finance have been working. So this is an impact of the scheme that we have come up after analyzing this. For example, MSME CDP scheme, the program has led to a 20 to 30% increase in turnover, and beneficiary units have seen an average increase, 35% production increase through their common facilities. And also there is a lot of credit linked capital subsidy that has been gone through the MSMEs. But one disadvantage here is that there is no data recording of energy savings that has been gained through these schemes. So we believe that digitalization can help collecting and monitoring data going forward. So this is a snapshot of the schemes that we have analyzed and what is the impact on ground, what are the savings, what are the monetary benefits that the SMEs have availed over these years. So here we have a much more other schemes as well for the impact analyzed. Now, what is the learning from this policy mapping, stakeholder consultations, and the analysis that we have done? We have understood that there needs to be a proper governance structure. For example, one of the learnings from Power Loom Cluster Development Scheme is that it has a detailed important role of state government agencies that has been listed in the policy framework itself. That what is the roles and responsibilities of a certain officer in implementing this policy. And we also understood that institutional frameworks need to be strengthened with structured rules and regulations arranged, and then it has to be communicated better across the different tiers of institutions. And then there needs to be a lot of collaboration between regional agencies, specialized experts, and national and state level implementers as well. And also we focused more on coordination mechanism. We need an effective coordination mechanism to synchronize all these activities and various components and manage this free flow of communication across departments. So we believe that these three, strengthening these three would result into a successful implementation of a scheme or a policy. So this is a sort of mechanism that we have come up, that we need a multi-layer top to bottom level and a cross-sectoral communication by strengthening our institutions. So this is how we have adopted this from the Comprehensive Power Loom Cluster Development Scheme. So these are the major key findings that what we understood is that both the central and state governments are embracing the shift towards the clean energy transitions, but then the schemes and programs need to be scaled up to have a more reach to the maximum number of MSMEs, considering the 63 million MSMEs that are present in the country. And there are exclusively and explicitly, there are schemes that focus on clean energy interventions, but then we need to scale these interventions to maximum possible. And then there are reduction in subsidies and incentives, especially for schemes directed at clean energy initiatives, because of multiple factors, including COVID-19, economic downturns, market destabilization, and political complexities. But then this sort of reduction in subsidies should not impact the clean energy transition going forward, so that we need policy consistency and robust financial mechanisms to keep this going. Currently, SMEs prioritize revolve around this stimulating their business expansion, creating jobs as part of the pandemic recovery efforts, and that is their priority. Though that is their priority, we need to push them towards the clean energy adoption through sort of financial incentives or energy savings, or even the financial savings as well. We also understood that there's a substantial awareness gap among these SMEs for availing the schemes, and given the sufficient awareness, SMEs are showing interest to take up the clean energy measures, but then this has to be scaled up from every stakeholder. And also uptake of certain standalone schemes in the state is being limited. So what do we recommend? We recommend a strong policy coordination across different sectors, tailored financial incentives. Of course, there are tailored financial incentives that are coming up, but then it has to be more strengthened considering the business needs of the small and medium scale industries. And also we recommend regular monitoring and evaluation system, and then bring out this sort of an yearly reports for the schemes that have been released, and then create a sort of transparent mechanisms on how the resources are being spread and used. So, and then we also emphasize the collaboration for resource efficiency, and then the demand aggregation approach have been highly effective. And then we could also choose this part to increase the clean energy uptake among the SMEs. And one thing that SMEs pointed out while discussing is that they need some sort of data sharing assurance, considering the business needs, and then the data security, and how it will be anonymized and then protected. These are the recommendations that they also want to put it across. So to conclude, if SMEs are to take advantage of clean energy measures, in the transition, they need policy consistency, government backing, awareness of the benefits of clean energy, financial support, and affordable clean energy technologies, and a supportive regulative environment. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Padmi, next.
Yeah.
So this is, we have last year conducted a series of roundtable discussions with various stakeholders in the MSME financing landscape, primarily the nodal agencies, the bank and financial institutions, the development financial institutions, MDBs, and also with MSME and MSME cluster development organizations. And we came up with, a conference proceedings on the discussion and deliberation that has happened in this roundtable discussions. So let me share with you a couple of the discussion points. Of course, in detail, we have also in the conference proceeding we have covered this finding. Next slide. So one thing which has emerged in this particular discussion is the role of decarbonization of SMEs given their unique energy intensity profile, though it is small at a unit level, but when you take into consideration the cohesive and the collective emission levels, these are primarily on a very high level, and this require a very concentrated approach, primarily considering their role in the value chain as a whole, which also Journal mentions in his previous speech. The second important thing which has came up was what is the role of clean energy technology for long-term sustainability and viability of these MSME, given the competing landscape, the increasing prices of the fossil fuel which they currently using. This is actually have an impact on their bottom line. Primarily, it has decreased their financial margin. So why they should focus more now on decreasing the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emission as a whole for the MSME sector. And also, in addition to the cost-saving mechanism of decreasing the fuel and electricity cost, what are the opportunities that lies ahead for the MSMEs to adopt clean energy technologies, primarily with respect to exploring new market and having a competitive edge, primarily the MSME units which are into export sector. Finance and access to finance and access to easy affordable finance has been one of the major discussion points, and that was actually the focus points of that particular discussion. This were actually lagging primarily because there was very limited mechanism of finance which tackles the the idiosyncratic needs of the SMEs given their overall financial positions and what could be some of the perceived risks which are there. So there is hardly any mainstream risk sharing mechanism, as well as some kind of catalytic financial instruments that are there. And there is a very much need for capacity building, long-term handholding support to MSMEs, not only for, availing the various financial assistance that are available under various schemes and policies of Government of India, but also in availing financial assistance or loans from bank and financial institutions, and meet up to the documentations and process of application for these MSMEs. So a lot of capacity building, land handholding supports are required to benefit from this clean energy technologies, as well as in accessing financial avenues. Some of the major recommendation which has come up in this particular roundtable discussions, where SMEs as a whole, as a unit, it makes much of a, it doesn't make much of a sense for the bank and financial institutions, primarily because of the high unit transaction cost, as well as so we need to develop some kind of aggregation model at the SME unit level, and then develop some kind of innovative B2B platform using the mechanism of a renewable energy service company, which is called as RESCOs, or energy service companies which are involved, and also involved in details the local DISCOMs, to facilitate this kind of clean energy technology interventions in MSMEs. There is also a need for improving the availability of informations, which Gautami also highlighted in the presentations, on existing clean energy technologies and various financing avenues that are available for SMEs to take it up. This clean energy technologies, informations are also very important for MSMEs to understand and objectively assess what are the benefits and costs that involves this clean energy technology implementation in their units. There is a need for developing a single unit platform at the SME levels to provide embedded financial assistance services to the SMEs, primarily given the MSMEs manpower cost and their capacity to to do documentations and gather information with respect to various schemes and financial assistance that are available. There are also a need that has been felt by these participants on increasing targeted lending for for the MSMEs clean energy interventions. There is a need for inflow of international financial assistance. Primarily, there is a need for issuing some kind of mandate to financial institutions to support the clean energy financing deployments in the MSMEs. At the same time, there is also a need that's been felt for simplifying the financial terms, conditions, the way to apply for this particular financial assistance, and building some kind of long-term handholding and capacity building supports for the MSMEs to take this up. There is also a need that has been felt to to utilize the existing mechanism which are there within the financial institutions, specifically like the RBI Green Deposit Framework, which has been taken up as a low-hanging fruits for deployments of clean energy finance for the MSME sector. There is also some discussions, deliberations on creating some kind of credit enhancement guarantee mechanism specifically for clean energy technologies, and to increase the uptake of building up data and sharing platforms, so that financial institution as a whole can also start looking at it as a viable potential opportunities. So this were some of these discussion that has happened in the roundtable, which has come up with a lot of insights and perspective about financing and facilitated financing for clean energy technologies and MSME. So without further ado, let me take into the next agenda in this webinar, is basically to discuss. So welcome all to this particular panel discussion which we are having as a part of this webinar on understanding policies and finance for SME from the perspective for clean energy transitions. So given the role that we have discussed so far about what is the role of MSMEs in industrial decarbonizations, primarily given their energy intensity profile, and how this clean energy technology is expected to greatly benefit the MSMEs in their quest to decarbonize. India's clean energy transition, will depend on how we address the decarbonizations and navigate these MSMEs to make this transition, primarily through conducive policies, easy and affordable financing, and facilitating and handholding and awareness building mechanisms. So what we'll see today in our discussion is, we'll delve into two important key aspects that is a very important enablers for the MSMEs clean energy transition. One is on policy, another is on finance, that are considered very essential to accelerate the adoption of clean energy technologies in MSME. To discuss this today, we are joined in by an esteemed group of experts to help and understand some of the policy and financial landscape, key opportunities and challenges for clean energy technologies and in SME. So without further ado, let me introduce to today's speaker in this webinar. We have been joined by Mr. Girija Shankar, General Manager, EESL Energy Services Limited. Mr. Manilal Chaudhary, who is a Regional Manager with Small Industrial Development Bank of India. Mr. Sanjeev Chawla, who is a Director with MSME DI Haryana. And Mrs. Neha Mudaliar, who is a Senior Vice President and Head of Climate Finance with Northern Arc Capital. So let me start today's discussion by asking my first question to Mr. Girija Shankar. So what we have seen over these years that this clean energy technology intervention in MSI has led to several nodal agencies, specifically BE and ESL at the national and state level, to announce a series of policies, schemes, interventions that supports clean energy, intervention in MSME. And these policies and schemes have supported the overall ecosystem for the support of the MSME in adopting renewable energy and clean energy measures. But what is critical to understand is basically, given these developments on implementation of clean energy technologies, how do you foresee the present role of the nodal agencies like BE and ESL and at the policy perspective in terms of increasing the uptake of clean energy and renewable energy and energy efficiency investment in MSMEs in India?
Thank you, Asimji, and welcome to all the participants here. And I also thanks WRI team just providing this opportunity to the ESL. So the points you have raised, it is very, very relevant that currently BE is the agency who is regulating the PET scheme, which is for the large industries. For the MSME, they have the few schemes and also the innovative technology facilitation, FLCD schemes and other schemes under which they have demonstrated that energy efficiency technologies can leverage the transition, what we are discussing today. But the key takeaway of the past schemes is that whenever the schemes which are supported from the grant or maybe the initial funding support from any organization, whether it be the MSME, UNIDO or B side, once that grant closes, the scheme also closed. So in order to sustain this type of the growth, where the large scale deployment of these technologies can be happen, I think various policy measures needs to be initiated from various partner organizations. So key role, I think primarily from the Ministry of MSME, who are working hard. They are coming up various schemes. CLSS scheme now they have changed in the new name with the gift scheme, where the large, I think the supports they have providing, and both support in terms of the interest subvention as well as the capital subsidy. Recently, they have launched this scheme. Apart from that, they have the Z scheme, the CDP, MSE, CDP schemes, what the Gautami has just encapsulated in the presentation. So these schemes are available. Apart from these, also there are some support system from the sir, मैं एक बार कोई conference में थोड़ी देर बाद. So there are other schemes are also from the state governments. What the Tamil Nadu scheme, the Gautami has mentioned. These schemes are very well in terms of the taking the support, financial support from the government side. But when we go in the real implementation, so the norms and standards, particularly for compliance of getting the incentive, that's our tricky one. MOMSME have, I think, the more elaborative frameworks where the benefits can directly be leveraged. But in the state government, I think so much IT enabling or the delivery mechanism is currently lacking. So this is the one perspective. Another perspective, what Gautami has mentioned, and also in your reports, it was captured that the capital subsidy or maybe the interest subvention is a one particular. If I consider the interest subvention, so it is a not a large amount forcing by the MSME units, because the interest what they are paying and what they are also getting, maybe the in terms of if they are providing the payment security mechanism in terms of the BG, and most of the MSME are taking the BG on the basis of the fixed deposit. So the retaining of the amount, that is one of the key challenge by which they are not able to maybe get those benefits. If they if we see that the large scale deployment aggregation of demand can happen, then the price maybe negotiation will may provide more benefit in terms of if we compare this with the interest subvention. So I'm giving the example. We have demonstrated two technologies, one at the jetting machine and the compressor in the Surat cluster. So we are able to reduce down the cost, which at that time are prevailing around more than 20%. So 20% reduction in cost is much larger, maybe the incentive in terms of the interest subvention or the capital subsidy. So the capital subsidy interest subvention is provide the larger, maybe the large volume or large number of industries can be take care, but the aggregation from with the partners, whether it may be the association, whether it may be the MSME, DI and the other their tool rooms they have, if we able to create a demand aggregation and just provide localized solution, that will maybe provide more capital benefit to the MSME unit. Another aspect, most of the MSME units, so if we see that RESCO or the ESCOs, so currently these RESCO and ESCO companies are also from the MSME sector, but their balance sheet are not maybe as good as if they are going for taking the financing from any organization or FIs. So here, I think the large FIs may have the more due diligence, but nowadays many FIs or the NBFC are coming up. So they may provide taking the risk, although they are charging the larger cost on that part, and whatever the cost, if any ESCO is paying to any NBFC, that is going to be built in their ESCO projects. So it will going to be maybe the slight more cost in comparison to the financing from the most nationalized banks, but they can provide maybe the wider volume on the different type of business model. So NBFC can play a role where they can localize, provide a solution to the solution provider or aggregating the demand and providing the solution in terms of RESCO or the ESCO. This is the one aspect. The third aspect, if we see that current, whatever the framework which we are using, so most of the energy efficiency project and what also Janil Singh ji has mentioned that the quantification of the saving, it is a very challenging task. And the MSME unit or the owner of the MSME unit does not have the faith what any ESCO or any service providers are claiming. So in those aspects, if we can able to develop maybe the standard protocol for quantification of energy saving or the estimation of the energy savings, that may be more useful. The last one, I just want to maybe say that nowadays, if we see that what the infrastructure projects are going on, or the any toll plaza or the roads are coming in the infrastructure projects. So the energy efficiency projects are very small in size, not a larger one. And the investment companies are not seeing as worth if they are wanting to it. But if we can club maybe the aggregation of all energy efficiency project at a cluster level or at a state level, then many players can play a role and they can able to provide solutions on more cost effective one. So the planning
I will
commission
interrupt. Yeah, I'll
planning
interrupt you here, and I
yes.
will again come back to you on that particular part of which you mentioned. We see a lot of developments that is also happening from B side in terms of creating a facilitation center or facilitating financing centers. We'll come into that part of these discussions. But let me just quickly move on to the other part of financing and financial supports that are required, very much required for these. Basically, the participation of bank, financial institutions, and mainstream institutional support for MSMEs. We have seen a lot of development that has happened recently, with the RBI coming up with the green financing framework on disclosure guidelines for MSMEs. At the same time, SEBI and other regulators are also building up and asking for larger portfolios for MSMEs. Would like to know from Neha, all these developments, how they are leading to some kind of opportunities for bank and financial institution to capitalize, and how you are seeing these kind of developments, both at the regulatory side as well as the side of the financial institution to take up as an opportunity rather than like only a mandate for them.
Sure. No, thank you so much, Ashim and the entire WRI team to discuss this very, very important topic. And very glad to be here with fellow panelists and the attendees who I believe represent a number of SMEs. So definitely, I think a number of positive, developments which have happened in the regulatory aspect for banks and financial institutions. I think the draft climate risk framework, which we hope will get implemented soon, lays out very clearly, for banks and large NBFCs from FY26 to have very clear thematic pillars around governance, strategy, risk management, but more importantly, even metrics and targets for climate risk. But very, very importantly, and I think because the nomenclature of the framework speaks about climate risk, I think what a lot of people are not realizing is what they also need to look at is the opportunity in the sector. So what that will mean is, large banks, financial institutions will now have metrics and targets which they will need to report on in terms of their performance against targets with regard to the lending which they have done in the climate sector. Also, what they will need to report on, from FY27-28 is their scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. And when we talk about scope 3 emissions for banks and financial institutions, it's basically the emissions which are embedded in their portfolio. So again, very, very important regulation which will hopefully promote a number of the large regulated entities in the country, the largest financial institutions in the country, to really look at not only climate as a risk, which definitely I think each of us is seeing day in day out, how it's affecting our portfolio, but also looking at this as a very, very large opportunity, and how developing the frameworks and systems to be able to capitalize on that opportunity. I think another very important regulation by SEBI is the BRSR regulation, which has been out, for the top 1,000 listed entities, where today they need to disclose scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 3 is optional, but given the way the trends are going globally and in India, we think that could be something which might become mandatory, over the course of the next few years. Again, a very, very strong impetus for even corporates to look at greening their supply chain. And as we're aware, most of the corporates, supply chain has a vast number of SMEs in there. So definitely, I think a lot of opportunities for banks, financial institutions to kind of capitalize on it. And there is a very, very favorable framework for it. I think you mentioned about the green deposits, and RBI came out with a green deposit framework. However, what we are seeing in the market, having spoken to large banks and financial institutions, is that there is still no benefit which is available for green deposits. And hence, I think, this is where the key challenge which comes in, from a lender's perspective, is that even though there is a lot of talk and a lot of interest in to do more green, more climate, the fact of the matter is that it is more expensive today in terms of the other monitoring, evaluation costs, which SMEs and others have to incur to kind of qualify for some of these facilities. And these can be one-time costs, and definitely the investments would have a very strong payback period, which we're seeing in a number of sectors. But what we get asked multiple times is, where is the kind of subsidized financing for this? And that is something, I think, which we're not seeing so far in the market. So I think those are things which we really need to work on. I think some of the other things which we need to work on, of course, the government is taking a lot of steps. There are a lot of discussions with regard to a taxonomy for climate and for green financing. So, of course, there is SEBI's green debt securities framework. There is RBI's green deposit framework. However, it would be very, very helpful for RBI to come out with a taxonomy so that we all have a standardized approach towards identification and monitoring of green assets, which will also make it very, very easy to kind of at least identify what are the amount of assets which have been funded, what has been the performance of these assets, and really for large institutional investors, and banks and financial institutions. When you think about credit, you're really thinking about how has this asset performed in the last 4 or 5 years, and what is the and give them the comfort that this is a good asset quality, and hence can be looked at for from a financing perspective. I think some of the other things which have already been mentioned by panelists is that finance is a part of it, right? I mean, we need the whole ecosystem to develop. Having worked with a number of, at Northern Arc itself, having worked with the FCs. So I think those were a few points that I wanted to highlight from a financing perspective. Definitely a very, very interesting sector, very high growth sector, number of innovative business models coming up, a number of banks aggressively looking at it. And I think we are right at the cusp where everyone is at least talking about it, is aware about it. But I think the final push and the inflection point which is needed for access of green financing, specifically for SMEs, which have anyway been facing challenges, from a financing perspective. I think we need to see a little bit more kind of to get there. And those are some of the kind
Thanks,
of
thanks,
the
Neha.
challenges.
Before you leave, I would like to ask one more question to you. Specifically, what
Sure.
kind of changes which you are seeing in terms of credit risk assessment, developing policy parameters within the bank, in terms of doing this and incorporating all these aspects of, clean energy assessment parameters within the banking system. How are you seeing, you have worked with both GCCI as well as now you're working with the financial institutions, how you're seeing a change and transformations in this kind of mechanism, the methodologies, the parameters, the policies of internal bank policies for MSME sector as a whole?
Sure, sure. So I frankly can't speak as much about other banks and their kind of internal policies. Even at Northern Arc, what we've had one of the best kind of credit costs in the whole industry, and so I don't think there will be a leeway which will be given just because it's a green financing. I think what we are seeing across the industry is that the underwriting philosophy policies will remain similar for climate. So, suppose to give you an example, if it is electric vehicle company or electric mobility company, you would look at it as any other vehicle financing entity, whether it follows the same benchmarks which you would look at any other vehicle financing company in terms of the units sold, in terms of the gross margins, the profitability, the growth, the management, the other drivers for growth. I think what is really changing is because of government push and policy, the market is much wider. And hence that is making a big positive change. So when credit teams are really looking at, and when you think about a bank or a financial institution, it's really, will my money come back, right? I have given a 3-year loan, I have given a 5-year loan, I've given a 7-year loan. What is the probability of default in that period of time, and whether I will get the money back? And hence, and how will the company grow in this period of time? So I think some of the positive policies really help. Some of the subsidies also definitely help. But the problem with subsidies is, like we're all aware, right? There is a risk that the subsidy could reduce or be, rolled back. And in such a scenario, you really want business models which can stand on their own feet. May not be today, but maybe eventually in the next 1-2 years, and hence the unit economics makes a lot of sense. So if suppose you're an EV company, what is the unit economics on a per unit sale? Whether that is, whether the profitability is increasing, whether the other component costs are reducing, and hence, like I'll give you an example, like we saw in the EV sector, right? In the two-wheeler EV space, the subsidy is no longer applicable from April. Now, we did see a small dip in the sales in April, but in May, we are seeing that most of the large OEMs in the sector have actually managed to, compete with the costs, even in the era where there was subsidy available. So, in the sense that they have absorbed some of the cost because the other component costs have gone down. So accordingly, I think these are some of the things which, as a credit risk person in a financial institution, when you're underwriting some of these models, these are things which people will be cognizant of as they're underwriting this. And it will differ in different sectors. So when you're talking about rooftop solar, again, of course, there is a lot of subsidy which is available, and it's a large market which opens up. So hence, what financial institutions are also doing are in discussion with the policymakers, with the governments, um, also looking at different states, so where the subsidies are different, like you presented it, right? And this we saw in the solar space as well. So certain states and some certain discoms with good financial health achieved financial closure much better and much faster. So I think it is a collaborative effort, and of course MSMEs as a sector. I think given the priority sector lending, given the focus of the governments, there is a huge push. The last thing I would say is, like Janelle mentioned, I think it is going to be about aggregation, and that is the biggest challenge actually which SMEs have faced, which is the scale and the size of operations, and what models can you do to aggregate the demand and aggregate the financing across multiple of these units and enterprises, so that it becomes meaningful for a single lender or a large institutional lender to look at the sector. I
Thanks,
hope
Neha,
that
for
answers
those
some of
inputs.
the question.
Very helpful, and it actually set the tone for our next, discussion.
Thank you
Is
so much.
with let me go to Maninal Sirji, and just to understand the role of collaboration, partnership, and aggregation, which Neha has mentioned right now. And what we have seen, SIDBI as a apex financial institution which supports MSMEs, has also undertaken a lot of collaborative work with various nodal agencies, with the state government, to catalyze the flow of finance for the sector. And at the same time, it is also developing various systems and policies and risk sharing mechanism for other banks to, be a part of the co-lending mechanism. So I'd like to know from Manilal sir, some of these initiatives, some of these collaboration works, how you are driving SIDBI as an entity, as a financial institution, how SIDBI is driving this kind of collaborations with various states, government, and various nodal agencies to take up the larger scaling up of financing for the MSME sector. Okay. So probably so let me so he'll join later. So let me go to Sandeep sir and just understand, at SME cluster level, primarily when what Neha was alluding to, primarily on the aggregations model. But what we have seen at a cluster level, the MSME, has a very important role to play in terms of their participations, in terms of their taking up clean energy interventions. So we'd like to know from you, what is the kind of stand which you have, the kind of experience which you have seen, the kind of resistance which you have seen within MSMEs to adopt clean energy technologies, and what the MSME, when we have been trying to facilitate this kind of clean energy technologies, what SMEs within your clusters have been telling about adopting clean energy technologies in this cluster?
Thank you, Mr. Roy. It's good to be part of this discussion. It's a very important issue. So, before I start my discussion on the various dynamism of clusters or aggregation, I have a few, some observations, some questions. The first is, how do we understand MSME? We at policy level or implementation level or making reports and all that. So MSME is these are generally driven by a single person. So he is the manager, he is the managing director, he is procurement person, he is quality person. So he doesn't go into much details. So he needs professional support, which is lacking in a sense, kind of hand-holding support. When we worked with the WRI in Yamunanagar for plywood cluster or utensils clusters at Kundli or other places, so they have to be given proper guidance. Rather, they have to be told in terms of money. By investing so much money, how much money they will save. So this language we need to understand, and we then need to communicate to the MSMEs also. The basic question, the MSME asks, what I will get if I do this. So he has to be told that, or she has to be told that, this is the benefit of implementing this. He is not able to, measure the energy losses. He's not able to know what is the percentage of energy in his total costing. He is not able to know how much competitive he can become after saving energy. So what kind of energy measures he should use? These are the things which we need to be demonstrated practically. And if he is able to see some videos or some success stories or some calculations which are readily available to him and which he can understand, then maybe he will implement the energy efficiency measures. We call carbon footprint, carbon decarbonization and all that. When MSME installs some energy saving mechanism, what kind of carbon saving he is doing, and is there any benefit to him? Is there any aggregation? Carbon credit, he is not getting any benefit of that, while large organizations can get benefit out of this. So these are few basic things which need to be addressed. And whatever energy efficiency and MSME is doing, it's mostly driven by economic considerations. Now, electricity is becoming costly. I tell you, of Panipat, there are a lot of now outages because of excessive demand, because of so many ACs installed in domestic sector as well. So there is a lot of outage now of electricity, and now he is interested to put up solar rooftop, and the basic reason is that economy. Now the cost of per cell has come down. So the energy cost is now maybe 2 rupees 50 paisa per unit as compared to 6 or 7 rupees what he's getting from electricity board. Earlier, when the difference was less, he was apprehensive. So many things he was telling that these are fire prone, or maybe his roof will be engaged and what he will do in future. Now, when it has become very economical, he's putting it up. And if we can do some aggregation and provide some benefit of carbon trading or carbon, so then again he will come forward. So this is a larger issue which needs to be addressed. Of course, Government of India has launched so many schemes in the past and still implementing. You have shown, a lot of MSME schemes. There are few corrections, before you put up that paper for wider circulation, like MSME cluster development scheme was recently revised in May 2022. Those are 22 में revision हुई थी, which is not mentioned here. Then CLCSS scheme is now not continued; it is withdrawn. We have CLCSS scheme only for this SC/ST category entrepreneurs, and then NMCP scheme is also now sort of withdrawn. So there are few corrections which you must do before you circulate this paper. Of course, we have been taking initiatives. Cluster development is also one of them. And then we need to mention about the gift scheme also, under which we are providing 2% interest subvention up to a loan of 2 crore rupees for green energy. This is being implemented through SIDBI, but it's Ministry of MSME scheme. Of course, we are promoting energy efficiency through JED. There are parameters which tell us about improvement in energy consumption. How do we measure energy? Because MSMEs, they have a problem. They do not know which machine is inefficient. They do not know which motor is consuming more power, because they cannot measure electricity consumption machine wise. And it's a game of machine wise calculation. It's not that I calculate the factory load and I will reach nowhere. I need to know the consumption of each motor individually, and he's not able to do. Energy audit can help him, and energy auditor can help him. We have a very long list of auditors, but the editors who can specifically help some specific industry, the list is very small. So then what to do? Then we need to provide some training or sensitization to the entrepreneur himself, though he has very less time, so that he becomes more aware of energy efficiency. And now energy efficiency has become a necessity rather than a choice. And now after we have declared carbon neutrality by 2070, so some entrepreneurs who are progressive, they are talking of energy efficiency, because we are going towards that direction. And if we sensitize that carbon dioxide ppm is so much now, it is bad for the children, it is bad for the society, they may come forward. So now this has to be this approach has to be economical as well as from psychological level, from a cultural level, where they are motivated to go for energy efficiency. I see a lot of energy being wasted at so many points. So it has to have a comprehensive approach. WRI may do its own mandate. I have no comment on that, but we need to have more comprehensive approach for resolving these energy efficiency issues and energy saving. Of course, solar has become now indispensable for industry, for remote places, for mini hydels are very good. So these are the initiatives which have to be taken in tandem. One thing I have observed, that you have not mentioned anything about lean scheme. Lean scheme is a scheme which is launched by our ministry, and it totally talks about energy efficiency, because it talks about reduction in wastages at all levels, maybe production, quality management, space management, inventory, supply chain, whatever. So all business processes. So lean is a scheme which is very closely related to efficiency of production processes, which in turn are energy efficiency. So we have to focus on modernization, because all our new machines are having servo motors and energy efficient motors. So our CLCSS scheme is totally focused on that modernization.
So I will stop you over here and
There is one thing last, my designation has been, not taken properly. This is not your fault. I have been, my designation has changed to Additional Development Commissioner very recently, 2 days back. So I'm not now working as director. I'm working as Additional Development Commissioner. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Thank you for the updates. And while so small clarifications, we have seen a lot of new changes that is there in the scheme and the scheme guidelines, because a lot of convergence is happening. And this is my question to Girija sir, that we have seen there is a new transformation that is happening in the MSME scheme and schematic financial assistance program. We have seen a lot of changes also happening in the stand in terms of creating a facilitating atmosphere, in terms of developing a financial facilitating center. Sir, what is now the current learning that has actually incorporated in the new scheme? We have seen the champion scheme coming up, which is a subsume of 6th level of scheme. What are these new developments, sir? If you can tell our viewers in terms of the changes that has happened and new avatar of schemes that has come up in the sector so far.
So, sir, broadly, what you have mentioned recently, this gift scheme the ministry has launched, and also the Chawla Sahab has mentioned. So they have, you are rightly mentioning that it has integrated solar energy efficiency. Around 1,000 technology they have covered. And apart from this, SIDBI, in collaboration with the ESL, we are also working on the one energy management revolving fund. It is 150 crore, the corpus fund, where financial services will be taken care from the SIDBI side, and technical services will be taken care by the ESL. And ESL will aggregate the demand, and we are working on around 22 technologies stated in our last 10 clusters. And we are hoping that with the initial this bouquet of 20 technologies, within 1 year, we will be able to create the demand of about 150 crore from the MSME sides. And this scheme is not only limited to the 10 cluster, but it will also expand to other clusters. And Ministry of MSME is also agreed that this gift scheme and this energy MSME revolving fund, both will be clubbed together, and the 2% and the other incentive which are currently available in the gift scheme will also be available this EMRF. And if we are able to aggregate the demand so that the cost reduction benefit can also be provided to the MSME units. We are also having the baseline and amendment, so all robust maybe the documentation in per se in terms of the energy saving in particular units on account of the deployment of these technologies will be captured. Apart from this, I also want to just maybe share here, if we able to aggregate the demand and we can maybe have the concessional agreement, the similar what the other infrastructure projects government of India is propagating, then I think the large scale deployment of all these technologies will be happen in the cluster. One aspect, I think, where the WRI and other stakeholders may be use that if we can able to provide some financial institution where MSME units or the ESCO companies, they can take maybe the bank guarantees from that fund. That may be, I think, very, very useful, and it will enhance the confidence of the MSME units and all the stakeholders when they are assuring that whenever the energy saving will occur, they will get paid, and there should be no maybe the intentional default from the stakeholders. So that is one need of the industry, and if some maybe the arrangement can be made where the BGs can be taken care from that particular fund. Another aspect is that the currently there is no insurance on the performance basis. So OECD, ADB, and other few B and other stakeholders are also working on it. If that product will be available in the market, then it will may provide more business opportunity to the ESCO, and also it will provide the confidence to the MSME clients that whatever the claims any ESCO is giving, if that has not been fulfilled, then that will be compensated through this maybe the performance guarantee to the MSME units, and it will also minimize the risk what they are perceiving now. So these are the few, I think, input from ESL side.
There's a last question before you open the floor to Q&A. We have seen during our discussion that there is a lot of limited awareness of different schemes and policies, despite having so many nodal agencies working on facilitating that. What are these new awareness building mechanisms that has been built up at the MSME cluster level, primarily, just to look from both of you, Ms. Sanjeev sir, in case he is there, or to Grija sir, what are the new, awareness building mechanisms that are actually being developed so as to build up, the MSME's knowledge about scheme and how to apply for those kind of things, and apply for financial assistance from different ministries?
Oh, you are rightly mentioning that this is also a very big need, and it will sustain the growth. Otherwise, whenever the one's project or energy efficiency success story will be created, if it will propagate to the others, then it will multiplying the effect, and the mouth publicity from the internal, maybe from the one-to-one MSM unit or from the members of the association to the MSM unit, that will leverage very large, I think, the footprint or the actionable points whenever such success story will be created. MOMSME already working on it, and most of nowadays the projects are delivered through the IT platform. So any success story happen, it will be able to from their side. Second, under this our UNIDO project, we also have the mandate that we have to train the operators, we have to train the technology solution providers. So maybe with the other partners and the support of maybe the government and the private institutions, we can maybe leverage these type of awareness activities. World Bank is also pursuing from ESL side that we have to provide more aggregation of demand through these type of outreach program where these aggregation of the demand can be happen. So I think many stakeholders are working on it. One point I think I missed out. Currently, whatever the energy efficient technology we are providing, so there is also a surplus of the old technology or old equipment. So the circular economy or the resource, I think the efficiency required that old motors, old compressor needs to be dismantled in the proper, maybe the green disposal way, and the material and the income source from those components should also be part of this, I think, the circular economy, where WRI and other such organizations can play a larger role. Currently, it is not available, and it is one of if we can create the waste from these waste or the old equipment, it will enhance the more energy efficiency percolation in the MSME industry.
Thank you, sir. I saw Manilal sir has also joined probably, but we have a very limited time frame. Sir, quick, updates if you can give in terms of CB's work, working with the state government in terms of facilitating this kind of intervention in the MSME sector, sir.
Thank you, Ashim. And good afternoon to other the panelist members. Thank you for giving me this platform. As we all know that SIDBI has been working this adoption of cleaner energy in MSMEs since 1995 with the collaboration of the German agencies and then Later on, we restarted again in 2007 with 3 international agencies from Japan, France, and Germany. So SIDBI has been continuously working towards this adoption of cleaner energy in MSMEs. But the concern came in 2015 with regard to this climate change. Since then every institution has been working towards the adoption of cleaner energy in the industrial activities and other activities too. So SIDBI has formalized many schemes for MSMEs for adoption of this cleaner practices, such as this machinery loans, then towards the implementation of this renewable resources, whether it be a solar energy or it's a turbine technology or a hydel power. And the very same way to the solid waste management also, there is a scheme in SIDBI. Apart from these schemes, SIDBI team across the nation has been very closely working with the state governments to adopt the cleaner practices or to devise the policies of their industrial activities in such a way that these activities are easy to adopt by MSMEs. But I feel it has not taken up to that level because there has been some or the other obstacle or what you can say compliances to comply, which are very difficult for MSMEs. Like we can say the units operating in the confirming zone are able to get finance easily for these cleaner practices, whereas the units operating from the non-confirming area, they are not able to comply the guidelines of the scheme to avail the benefits of these cleaner practices schemes. So my suggestion would be, yes, we should make aware of the availability of these cleaner practices to MSMEs, which we and the other institutions have been doing. And we should be following up with the state governments to frame the policy in such a way that whether the MSME is in the confirming and the non-confirming area, they are able to get the access to these cleaner practices schemes. As previously the other panelists have indicated that MSME Ministry have launched 2 schemes, GIFT and SPICE, wherein the interest, capital subsidy and 2% interest subvention is also available for MSMEs. So I think these 2 schemes would definitely help MSMEs to adopt the cleaner practices. So having a shortage of time, I would end up here. And let's hope that we have easy policy ahead for these MSMEs to come out to adopt all this. Thank you, Asim. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for giving the inputs despite your hectic schedule. I will stop here, and we have one question which is there in the Q&A box. We'll take it up first quickly in case Manilaal sir, if you're there, if you can also support answering this. So why one question which has come up is why this guarantee funds, specifically the CGTMSE, they have not well received by the MSME as a whole. If you can throw some lights on that, why it has not really worked for the MSME.
Well, Ashim, I would say that yes, there is definitely this guarantee fund has not taken up to that level. Probably institutions finding it difficult to lend to those MSMEs, those who are working in the either in the rental premises or not having adequate setup to service the debt. So I don't think, but yes, many of the institutions are covering the assistance up to 1 crore. And why the institutions are not taking up this guarantee? Because of that track record. What you can guess, whatever facilities they've gone, so many of the accounts must have gone bad. So their premium gets higher. So probably those institutions may not be taking up exposure for these guarantees. Otherwise, I don't see any other reason why it should not go up. But yes, Now, since the hybrid model is there, so people are taking exposure against these guarantees also. And since government has revised this scheme to 5 crores, let's hope in the times to come, this guarantee fund also takes off.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And we are almost the end of this particular sessions. And we'd thank all of you for joining this. And we look forward that in future, more policy support as well as financing would pave the way for clean energy intervention in the MSME sector. I would now pass on to Abhishek if he has the last closing remarks on this webinar. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Hashim. Thanks for that insightful discussions and everything. I'd like to take this moment and thank one and everyone for being a part of this webinar. A special thanks to our guest speaker, Janelle sir, for setting the context and that allowed us to deep dive into the discussions around MSMEs. Sanjeev sir, Girja sir, Neha ma'am, and Manilal sir provided some really insightful and informative discussions that helped us understand the context for the policy and the finance angles in the SMEs. Kudos to my colleagues Gautami and Ashim for providing that crisp presentation and providing that the overview of the research that has been conducted. Finally, a big appreciation for all the participants that were a part of this webinar. A really big thank you to one and everyone. I'm sure we have all had our takeaways today, and really thank you all, one and all, for being a part of this journey. Please note that all the research material, including the webinar recording, will be sent up in the follow-up mail soon after this webinar. So once again, thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.